I dedicate this sermon to Mary Ellen Neal, a former member of our church who served on the search committee that brought me here in 2001. Mary Ellen always wanted this church to be more boldly present on behalf of our values in the larger world. And I'm also reminded of when she was in hospice and she asked me to sing the Hymn of Valor with her, and I did, a treasured memory. I'm chatting with a member of our church. The hymn, "Be Ours a Religion," comes up. A look of disgust crosses her face. "I don't like that hymn," she says. This is a member who is more engaged in the life of our church than most. She has a strong UU identity and service to which she clearly lives her life. "I'm a Hymn of Valor person," she said. For years, most of you know we have concluded the majority of our services here with a hymn written by Henry Adlard. He was a former minister of our congregation who served in the 1920s. His hymn, known by us as the Hymn of Valor, has a certain charm to it for sure. Soul of truth, eternal goodness, sojourn with us as we part. Fill our minds with high endeavor. Keep us just and pure in heart. Strengthen us for daily duty. Guide us by the inward light. Hallowed be each coming morning. Calm and peaceful be each night. I too consider myself to be a Hymn of Valor person. In fact, I liked it so much upon my arrival in Des Moines nearly 13 years ago that I further cemented its position as a fixture in our services, ensuring that we sang it almost every week. But over time, the sweet familiarity of that hymn has faded a bit for me, as I have been hearing it as too inwardly focused for where I see us going as a congregation, or at least where I yearn for us to go, where I believe the future is calling us to go. Let me be clear, I'd never want to eliminate the Hymn of Valor from our repertoire. I like both its message and the tradition of it. It's important to me. But I do want to close our services now and then with a hymn that asks perhaps a bit more of us than filling our minds with high endeavor, keeping us pure in heart, being guided by the inward light. I want us to leave our services encouraging each other to live our UU values more boldly, to cross lines that divide us more frequently. I want us to aim for more than the comfort of calm and peaceful nights for ourselves when we know that many continue to be kept awake by inequality and injustice and insufficient respect for the interdependent web of which we are a part. I want us to remind ourselves that what makes what we do religion is how we choose to live in the relationships of our daily lives outside of these walls. And so every few weeks, this past year or so, we have been singing as a benediction, "Be Ours a Religion," the hymn my friend admitted she didn't like. "What's not to like?" I asked her, surprised that this active, outwardly focused member did not share my appreciation for occasionally replacing the familiar 1920s lullaby with the sweeping call of a newer hymn. "It's so saccharine," she said. "Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere." Do you know the origin of those words? Have you told us? Touché. So let it be known that the words are from Theodore Parker, the 19th century Unitarian minister, abolitionist, reformer, and activist who preached the prophetic imperative as much as any other minister in our liberal religious history. It was Theodore Parker, after all, who first spoke about the moral arc of the universe being long but bending toward justice. Parker said that. in words that have been echoed by everyone from Martin Luther King to President Obama. When Parker proclaimed, "Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere," he was not preaching saccharine, and he was not being hippy-dippy, as another member recently described the hymn to me. He was encouraging us to see our religion as a way of being in the world that should not only guide our lives, but also serve the common life that we share. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. When I first found Unitarian Universalism at the age of 29, I confess I didn't need its sunshine to go everywhere. I mostly just needed it to illuminate the possibilities of my life. That was all I was looking for. That was enough. Though I had been raised attending Methodist and Presbyterian services and Sunday school classes, and my memories of those experiences were positive, I had spent most of my 20s avoiding religion. The dogma, as I understood it, didn't ring true for me. I wasn't sure I needed the community. I wasn't angry, I was mostly apathetic. I'd convinced myself that leaving church behind was a step in my development into adulthood. And for a time, I guess, it was. But as I approached the age of 30, I found myself yearning for a deeper connection to the mystery and the meaning of life. I found myself, to my surprise, being called back to religion. I still believed a lot of the values I'd received growing up in Christian congregations, the importance of loving my neighbor, the need for compassion, the necessity of forgiveness. But I also believed that ideas about God, while interesting, can often be divisive. I believe that no one knows for sure who, what, or if God is. Therefore, I was in search of a religion that didn't claim to have the truth with a capital T about God. A religion that would leave room for believers and non-believers alike. A religion that would leave space for me. A religion where I could grow and change my mind if necessary. Learn whatever it was that this life needed to teach me. A religion that was about bringing people together across the theological lines that divide them. A humble, open religion, less fixated on what we believe about God than on what we can do and be together. Did a church like this even exist? I had to look. Many years before, a trusted friend, after hearing me express my frustration with the truth claims of religion, shared that he thought I was a UU. But at the time, I didn't know what that meant, and I wasn't sure that I cared. But now, I was ready to see for myself. So one spring Sunday, I walked into Community Church of New York, a UU congregation there, where banners from the world's religions were hanging throughout the sanctuary and inviting confirmation of the different ways we all search for and find meaning. During the opening moments of the service, I remember flipping through the hymnal, searching for signs that people of different theological persuasions would be welcome. Did they expect people to believe in God, I wondered? I wasn't sure I could do that. I needed to be in a place where I would have the freedom to discern my own spiritual path, where I could be with and learn from others who were doing the same thing. Everything I saw that morning suggested that this might be the place. I immediately got involved in the life of the church. I started attending small group classes and discussions. I even started teaching in the Sunday school, sharing my adventure of becoming a UU with the 5th and 6th graders. I spent a night once a month volunteering in the church's homeless shelter and became a part of the young adult group. From the start, Unitarian Universalism clicked with me. It didn't click because the services were always amazing, or because the classes were always stimulating, or because the welcome I received from the members was always ideal. It clicked because I knew that I had the freedom to believe not as I should, but as I must. not on someone else's terms and with their terms, but on my own, with my own. And I knew that others had the same opportunity, and that it was better for us all that we were doing it together. Within a year, led by my own inward light and the freedom and inspiration I found at my first UU church, I enrolled in theological school. I felt called to help our religion reach more people like me, people who also yearned for community and a deeper connection to life. And now, 13 years into my ministry, I believe I have, with your help, done much of what I set out to do. Together, we have grown the presence of Unitarian Universalism in central Iowa. Together, we have welcomed hundreds of new UUs into our church. Together, we have changed lives in the process. Of that, I am sure. We have taken bold steps so that our religion might, like sunshine, go everywhere, or at least go more places than it used to. But here's the thing. I'm not done changing, and I hope you aren't either. You see, over these years with you, my understanding of what religion is here to do has been evolving. This evolution began at the end of my first year of ministry with you when I was invited by a leader of Amos, a local congregation-based community organizing effort here in town, to attend a 3-day training sponsored by the Industrial Areas Foundation. This is the community organizing outfit where Barack Obama got his start. Saul Alinsky helped bring it into being. At the time, no one in our congregation was participating in Amos. I was the only one. I think a few members had attended a meeting or two, but nothing had come of it. The first day of the training, when during the check-in of a large group meeting with other people from other congregations all over the country, I introduced myself as a UU minister, and one longtime Amos leader from here in Des Moines, a well-known clergy colleague who is now my friend, ribbed me a bit in front of everybody else about UUs being people who weren't sure why we were a church. I wasn't offended by his ribbing. After all, I too was used to discounting the views of those from other religions. He just didn't get it, I assured myself. As the training continued, I learned in 3 days what it means to be a citizen. I learned about the importance of public life, and I learned more about the prophetic imperative, the call to live in service to the vision of beloved community and love and justice. I learned more about the prophetic imperative in 3 days than I had learned in 4 years of theological school. And I was also invited to pray. Probably just a few times during the 3 days, but it felt like a lot. I pushed back some, telling the organizers leading the training, I'm not sure how this is going to go over with the congregation I serve. Do we have to pray so much? These good people just looked at me funny, like I was a vegan expecting to be served in a steakhouse. I had to do some soul searching. Mark, I thought, you can't claim to value religious freedom and crossing the theological lines that divide us if you are going to be put off by other people practicing their religion. Can't you leave them some space? Why does this have to be about you? At the end of the training, I had a lot to think about. Maybe my colleague was right after all. When it came right down to it, maybe I, too, was one of those UUs who weren't sure why we were a church. The training had left me agitated and inspired. It's a good combination, I now know. When calling me to be your minister, this congregation said that you wanted to be more known in the community, that you wanted to be more active, more visible. Well, I saw involvement in Amos as a way to do that. So I started bringing members with me to actions and trainings. And each time we began or ended a meeting, we were invited to pray, usually by a Christian minister who would use words like Heavenly Father and include lines like, Lord, help us do your will. I looked at my friends who had come with me, my friends from this church. In these moments, I could see the discomfort in many of their faces. Afterwards, they would tell me how awkward they felt. And I told them the same thing I told myself. Give people of different faiths who share your interest in working for justice and building the beloved community the space to be who they are. This doesn't have to be about you. This doesn't have to be about us. After all, we have work to do. Well, those members and I, and many of you, we have all learned together over the years, haven't we? We have grown our understandings of the role and the responsibility of our church in the world. And more than a decade later, our congregation remains a vital, active member of Amos. We are no longer known in the community as the people who don't pray. We are known as the people who show up, the people who get things done. We have seen that when we live our UU faith in public, checking our discomfort with theological language and political difference at the door, we can be difference makers. We can be, as Marilyn Sewell suggests, the yeast in the loaf. In a letter for the search packet that we've prepared for our associate minister candidates, and I can tell you we have 3 candidates that are all vying for the position. They're all wonderful. We'll be lucky to get any of them, and we will. In that search packet, Paul Turner, the lead organizer of Amos, wrote this about us. He said, whether it's naming the inherent racism of our justice system, challenging the institutions of the labor market to work for the underemployed, or just being willing to sit down in fellowship with people who are doctrinally and theologically different from them, the members of First Unitarian always show up. They are one of a handful of congregations in Des Moines that take seriously the twin responsibilities of mercy and justice that our faith traditions require of us. First Unitarian, more than any other congregation within Amos, has embraced the relational process at the core of organizing for justice. Thank God for them. I'm grateful for Paul's praise, and I share his gratitude for all that we have done with and for and through Amos. Along with many of you, I continue to carry the lessons I have learned through this work into my other efforts and my witness in the community for the things I care about. And I have to tell you, I'm still learning, and I've got a lot more learning to do. I am learning that rather than deny or denigrate the religious perspectives of others, our religion calls us to cast a loving vision of a more loving world. I am learning that the way to bring about an earth made fair and all her people one is not to keep digging the chasms that divide us, but to find ways to build bridges across which we might one day meet. I am learning that the means to persuade people to share our values is not by writing the most scathing letter or offering the snarkiest comment in a public meeting, fun though that might be. But by speaking from our hearts about the things that matter and living in such a way that others can't miss our loving intentions. I am learning that the way to be the change we want to see is not to keep ourselves cloistered in the comfort of like-minded people, as tempting as that is, but by taking the risk to build some relationships with those across the lines that so often divide us. Indeed, I can tell you, the greatest learning I have had in recent years has come from working on projects like Project Iowa, with those who are different in theology and background from me, very different. People who have had to put aside their differences with me to work toward the common good. People who have had to make their own compromises to stay at the table. People who have modeled for me what it means to be in community. And I am convinced that I, as your minister, and we as a congregation have much more to learn. We have much more that we can offer too, and we have much more that we can together become. Several years ago, in an article in the Washington Post, a Presbyterian minister named Henry Brinton argued that the future of religion would rest upon churches learning to get out of themselves. Churches learning to get out of themselves. He wrote, "I've experienced many occasions when the church has concentrated more on itself than on the world around it, when it has put more energy into maintenance than into mission. People," he continued, "are naturally going to be drawn to a missionary church, one that works from the walls of the church outward. For the good life is found in enthusiastic service to the community." Or as Dietrich Bonhoeffer put it, the church is the church only when it exists for others. And that's why I know now is the time to add an associate minister of social justice to our staff. A minister who will be energized by the challenges of helping us gain more focus in our efforts to advance justice. A minister who will agitate and inspire us to expand our reach beyond our walls. A minister who will love us into more openly and effectively living our values. Who will companion with us on our journey to become the church and the community presence that we yearn to be. Can you imagine the possibilities? Are you ready to bring them to life? Several years ago, after I had been in the news for my public stance on marriage equality, a member of this church came through the receiving line and he shook my hand and he said, "Mark, I want you to know I am proud to pay your salary." Well, I know what this fellow gave, and it was a far short of paying my salary, but I understood and I welcomed his point. He was sharing his pride that the minister of his church, a church that he supported financially at the intersection of his resources and his generosity, was living his religious values in a bold and public way. He was acknowledging that without his financial contributions and those of his fellow members, the church could not attract a minister with the skills and the passion to be the right person in the right place with the right words at the right time. He was savoring his role in making it possible for his minister to have been in the news in the first place, and he was right to do so. The truth is, when I speak at a public gathering, when I officiate a same-sex wedding, when I serve as the chair of Project Iowa, every time I am introduced as the minister of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines, you are with me. My ministry, you see, is your ministry too. And you should take pride in that. Now, I want you to imagine, what could it be like? What will it be like come August when we have another effective, articulate, inspiring UU minister in our church and in our larger community, speaking up on behalf of our values, organizing us to do the same? How much is that added presence worth to you? If all who have yet to pledge would increase their giving by just a few dollars a week over last year, and those of you who have never pledged would decide that today's the day to start, we would easily meet our goal. Some could pledge more than a few extra dollars a week. And then we could do even more. We could do even more. We could do even more toward being a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. May it be so. May ours be such a religion.